everybody. Welcome back to Men Need to Be Heard. It is Dan, and have I got an exciting show for you today. It's one I've been waiting to do for about 5 years now. And my guest is someone who has participated in the live show that I do every week called Boy Meets Squirrel. He's not on every week, but most weeks he's contributed some amazing comments. And I reached out to him and said, you got to come on with me one-on-one so we can talk about various issues and really dive into some what I think are very important topics, things that aren't really talked about a lot in the mainstream. And I think you're going to like some of our takes on things. So let me bring him on. My friend is TheoWAF. Am I saying that right, Theo?
Yep. I did say it correctly.
Names are not my strong world, so just so you know. Welcome to the show. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to be on your show. Yeah, I've been a big fan watching you make your shorts and then making your response videos on YouTube. I think it's especially when you're talking, you're like, hey, look, men aren't being treated well. Men are being treated badly. This is the actual situation. Men want their peace. Men aren't trying to date you. Men are like very far away. Like, where are all the good men? They're avoiding you. Like,
Yeah, this whole
I'm laughing.
we are laughing because they think we're
Yeah,
so mad. Like lately, as we're filming this, it's mid-November, we're post-election, and the
yeah.
4B movement is flying. They're all shaving their heads, which I just find absolutely hilarious. I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's a little bit of appropriation because, hello, I'm bald, you are, bald brotherhood.
Mhm.
But they think we are so angry that they're doing that and declaring they want nothing to do with this. In reality, 90 some odd percent of guys are laughing their asses off about it.
Yeah, so a lot of us have stopped talking basically to these women, particularly in the West, and we have done this for over 5 years. So even
Yeah.
before the pandemic, we weren't speaking. And when they say this, it just confirms what we've been talking in the manosphere for a long time, that they really don't have anything to offer except their bodies. And if that's the only thing that they're withholding, okay, so in the 4B movement, where are we losing? Like,
Yeah.
because we're already not doing anything with them. We're not talking to them. We're not taking them out on dates. And what is the percentage of like guys 18 to 30 who aren't dating? It's
Oh,
around
it's a
60%.
yeah. I was going to say the last numbers I saw were high 50s, low 60s. I actually
Yeah.
think that's an undercount, to be honest with you, based on now. Admittedly, I'm going off of my followers and people reaching out to me, but having done a little bit of research, I think it may be as high as 70%. It might even be approaching three-quarters of men, at least in that age
Yeah.
group.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm 51. And of course, I've been in this group. I've been doing this since 2010 when the original men walking their own way, let's say that.com was available.
Yep.
And I have pretty much gone into radio silence with Western women. No communication, nothing. Unless only time I even talk to them is if it's in a public environment where there's a camera around. And I think that's really unfortunate because, again, I did 16 years in Japan. And in Japan, I could just talk to anyone I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
It was no big deal. There was no threat. But here, unfortunately, all communication, even empathy, um, giving any kind of help, that has been weaponized against men.
Mm-hmm.
And so, therefore, like, what other option do we really have? And they're not really seeing this situation that men have really changed. And they're basically like, hey, look, it's just, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. I can't deal with a possible threat of me trying to help you. So, no, I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, the risk is you'll lose your freedom at this point. I mean, that's what we've
Yeah.
gotten to. We're going to dive into that in detail because that's one of the things I want to talk to you about. But before we do, why don't you just share with the audience a little bit about yourself, whatever personal thing you want to share, and also talk a little bit about the Black Manosphere, which you're a part of, and share with them what the organization's about.
Okay. So, yeah, I started my participation in the Manosphere in 2010. Before then, I was very blue pilled. I mean, I was just super, super, super blue pilled. I was what was called a white knight and
Hmm.
listened to women, knew their problems, knew their stories. I was all about it. And I really took that pill that if I became a better man, if I did this and that for women, that their lives would be improved. And basically that they were always victims all the time because of men, right?
Right.
So okay, I was deep into that. So from 2010 to 2017, I was in the white manosphere. I didn't know there was any other manosphere. So for me, it was just the manosphere.
Hmm.
In 2017, I started listening to Mamiya Obsidian Ali, and then we just call him Obsidian, and then BGS, which is BGS Igmore. And those two showed me the real depths of the problem with men
Hmm.
and just how much pain and suffering was occurring with men. And I made my decision then that the real battle in the manosphere was going to be in the black manosphere, not what I call the white manosphere, or the mainstream manosphere. So I decided to move over to the black manosphere, and I continued my path there. Another part about me, again, I was talking about men walking their own way.
Hmm.
I was type 2, which is monk mode. I did monk mode 10 years.
Wow.
So during the 10 years, there was no dating, basically no communication, nothing, no resource given to women whatsoever. And I just focused on um, a lot of things like improving my life and taking care of a lot of problems and trying to figure out why do I have this chip in my head that says I'm good if I give my resources to women? Like what's going on here?
Hmm.
Like what's my benefit? What's my benefit to my life if I have this chip in my head? And so I was basically removing it step by step, just trying to figure out why it was there. So that's my history. Again, with Kevin Samuels,
My
and then
man.
with, of course, with
I love
Jonathan
Kevin.
Sharp too.
Yeah.
With those two, I started showing my face, and that's again the rest is history. I started becoming very prolific, and then I was in Kevin Samuels' group. I'm still in Kevin Samuels' group, and then with him, I decided to create the Black Manosphere Conclave,
Hmm.
and that was what basically it was is an opportunity for us to do cloud engineering and to become passport bros. So I started that in 2021. I've had four conclaves so far with Mamiya Obsidian Ali and then Shannon Ross. And we've had it in three cities so far, and we're pretty good. So we're pretty good right now. I financed the first two conclaves. It cost me over $80,000,
Wow.
and then I partially funded conclave four. But now largely speaking, it's self sufficient, and I have over 700 students who are studying cloud with me.
Wow. So, Theo, let me ask you this. Was there a particular thing that kind of made you see the light, if you will? You know, a lot of guys, they go through in my case, perfect example, going through family court for that first time I walked
Mm.
in there. I've talked about it many times on this show. And, believing that honesty and truth and justice was the American way, and finding out in about 5 seconds that was a load of crap. But was there something for you that really triggered it, or what are you laughing about? Yeah, because
So I,
my experience is
yeah,
everybody's, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, for me, it was the first one was my father.
Okay.
I looked at my father after I graduated from university and I was about to go to Japan, and I recognized how much work he did and the lack of respect that he had from my mom. And I kind of looked at the situation. I was like, wait a minute. Like, I'm a Gen Xer. I was like, not me. Like, typical, like, that's not going to happen to me. So that was the first one. I was like, wait a minute. This isn't necessarily a beneficial situation for me. The next one was I was, of course, deep into liberalism
Hmm.
and supporting women, helping women go all out, listen to them all the time. And then a woman decided that I was a part of the patriarchy and that I was a part of the problem.
Wow.
And I was looking at her, and I was like, look, woman, you couldn't get a credit card until 1974, but you could own slaves before that. And you're looking at me, I'm a black male. We don't have power at all.
Hmm.
Like, what are you talking about? What patriarchal structure are you talking
So I'm
about?
assuming she was
Because,
white.
yeah, she
Okay.
was white.
Okay.
And I was just looking at her, I was like, wait a minute, how dare you say that to
Yeah.
me? And I'm listening to you. The guys who are actually doing the damage are the ones who aren't listening. And the ones who are listening to you and are sympathetic and trying to solve a problem, you treat us like crap. And I sat back like, wait a minute, something's wrong.
It's not adding up.
Like, yeah, I'm not in a good position right here. I need to jump off this boat.
So two plus
Yeah.
two plus two did not equal four. It was equaling five. I think that was the argument they made not too long ago on. I think it was TikTok.
Yeah, that was Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
Dostoevsky said that in Notes on the Underground. I'm a Russian major, just so you know.
Oh, okay. You got
So
me one up on that.
yeah, I did 1 year in Russia, so I did
Nice.
a travel abroad. So that's about freedom. You
Hmm.
know, if you're controlled, then you need to break out and have your freedom. So 2 plus 2 equals 5. What I was seeing was that with liberalism, 2 plus 2 equaled like a -4 against me. I owed them 4.
Hmm.
And no matter what I did, it was always resource transfer. That was the first main point that I looked at. Now this was with, okay, I'm listening to a guy named Sandman. Shout out to Sandman.
Hmm.
And one of the things he's talking about is there's always this resource transfer to women. That's like the big point. And if you're going to walk your own way, the first thing you have to do is stop the resource transfer.
Hmm.
And I was like, right on. Why am I doing resource transfer? It doesn't make sense. So I stopped, and immediately I had more time. I had resources. My life was improving. And I was like, wait a minute, what was I doing before?
Well,
Like,
see, this is fascinating to me because it's a slightly different perspective than you normally hear. Right? Is you're coming from
yeah,
from someone who, for lack of a better term, and I mean this as not an insult, was a feminist,
yeah.
right? A male feminist,
Hmm.
and finding,
No, I was.
yeah,
I declared myself as a feminist before.
yeah.
That's correct.
So when you're coming from that side of things, and you see the light, as it were, that's not something you hear very often, right? It's starting to happen more and
Hmm.
more. I will say. I think it's that sled is coming down the hill faster and faster.
Hmm.
But going back, you said 2010 and before. I've been at this since the 90s. You really didn't
Hmm.
hear that perspective. If a man was a male feminist, he never really fully got out of that mode, right? He was, and
Right.
you see it still with some of the so-called experts that are out there, and I'm not trying to knock them, but they're talking about men's issues. Most of these guys are in academia, but they always do it with the apology to women, right? Well, we have to address, boys falling behind in school, but we don't want to take anything away from women, blah, blah, blah. Apology after apology. And I think that takes away from the message. You seeing the same type? You're laughing. That's why I'm asking. Are you seeing the same type stuff?
No, I see. I definitely agree with you on this. This is something that I was noticing over time. So, I went to my university. My alma mater is University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana, and I took 3 feminist courses there, and I learned a lot. I mean, there was a lot of points I never really considered about the situation, and my main point was, okay, like, don't get in the way of women. Don't, if they give them the same wage for the same work that they're doing, so don't do like wage discrimination. I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm cool
And
with
then
that
don't
now.
just yeah, and then don't discriminate against them in terms of power based upon the fact that they're women.
Hmm.
And I was like, pretty much, I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Now, when we go into the African American area, we have kind of the same idea. So don't discriminate against me because I'm black, and then don't pay me less because I'm black, and like don't like deny me employment because I'm black,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So I saw them as being pretty much equal. The difference was when I got that section on my black side, it ended there. We're like, okay, we cool. We could, okay, you're doing that. I'm off. I'm off doing my thing. Thank you very much. I'm it. I don't need anything more. And then I noticed over time that on the feminist side, they wanted more and more and more, and
Hmm.
it didn't stop.
Right.
And then there was always this, if they couldn't get what they wanted, suddenly there was some sort of, I can say, what, deviance or molestation coming up. And they just keep on going with the emotions there to get what they wanted.
Hmm.
And I was like, wait a minute, this is going too far. Like, this isn't who I on the black side, it's kept on going. So that's why I laugh at it, because when the feminist, the male feminist, is saying we don't want to, irritate or offend the women, they never have that point for black men.
And that's one of the
Never.
reasons I
They
wanted to
never have
have
that
you on,
consideration.
right? Is because I've seen that also as an old white guy, right? And that's something
Mm-hmm.
that I've struggled with personally is understanding there are parallels to what you're talking about. What
Mm-hmm.
the black nation, if you will, in general, African American,
Mm-hmm.
and feminists or feminism was going through back in the 70s when I was young enough. I remember all that stuff, right? And it did
Mm-hmm.
diverge a little bit. And let's be clear, there's issues for both black and for women, black men,
Mm-hmm.
etc. Still, absolutely that need to be addressed. But to your point, and this is, I think, a very key thing, I think when we're talking about black issues, and you and I are going to get into some of them as far as, especially with what black men are going through, but with black issues, it's about, I'll put it as making sure that things are fair and equal, right? Whereas
Yeah.
with women's issues, it's about power. It's that transfer of
Right.
power from men that they think actually was in existence. I quibble with that. Um,
Mm.
but now it's become we need to have all of the power. And even the slightest little bit that they don't have,
Right.
they run with in victim mode. And that it's an interesting parallel. That's one of the things that I'm curious to see
Right.
what as someone in that community, in the black community, how does the community in general think about it? Like I see a, if you will, a division between black men and black women regarding that. Black women are all
Right.
about the feminist side, and again, this is an old white guy talking, okay? I
Yeah. Yeah. That's
my
fine. That's fine.
my outside perspective is black women care more about feminism than black
Mm.
issues. And I may be wrong, and that's why I want
Mm.
you to correct me if I am. Whereas black men are more about their issues. Now, maybe black, maybe somewhat women's issues, but the issues that they're facing. Is that a correct perception or not?
I would say, okay, so mostly for black women, that would be entirely correct. They're very much on the feminist side, and you see that with their voting patterns. You have over 90% support of Kamala in the Democratic Party in the last election, but that was also same for Biden, for
Yeah,
Obama.
pretty much every election
So
going
they're
back. Yeah.
yeah, they're very strong into it. So we have talked in the Black Manosphere that they basically threw black men under the bus during the 60s with the feminist movement,
Hmm.
and we were in the same car as them before. We were in the same position as them before. So, in order for them to show that they were having the same kind of problems with patriarchy, they had to villainize black men when we were in no position to be villains to anyone.
That's what blows my
And
mind, Theo, is how did that happen?
yeah, there's various things that, like, again, with the feminist movement. I think the big one is the color purple. The color purple was probably one of the most damaging movies to African American society that I could possibly think of,
Really?
and it showed a position of black men that we are not. That's not who we ever really were. Most black, particularly black men, were in no position to have that many resources to be applied against black women. For the most part, black men are in no position to stop or hinder black women's advancement. And largely speaking, within the community, black women, it's a matriarchy. It's a gynocentric matriarchy.
Hmm.
It's they are the ones who are the most educated. They control the media. They're the ones who are the most successful. I, in the manosphere, am an outlier. So I'm not a part of I'm not a part of a gynocentric matriarchy whatsoever. I'm a part of a patriarchy, or I'm creating a patriarchy.
Hmm.
And if you're in my environment, I'm the one who has the authority, not anyone else. I don't need another person's money. I make plenty on my own.
Hmm.
I got two master's degrees, so I've got my education, everything that's good there. So you're seeing this small but blossoming black male conservative movement and grow as black men in particular are waking up and asking the question, what is the Democratic Party doing for them?
Hmm.
And more importantly, within the communita, which is the gynocentric matriarchy within the black community, how are black men actually benefiting, or are they just being used? And for the most part, we're saying, hey, you guys are just being used. We're out of it. We're out of that community. We're not a part of that anymore.
Hmm.
We have a separation. So, guys who are still in there, you got over 75% of black men who are still in this gynocentric matriarch. Guys, why are you there? What are you doing? So we're trying to pull them out.
Hmm.
But most of those guys are hopelessly lost in there. They're not going to be able to get pulled out. They're like the Matrix. They're
Really?
hopeless. Like they will stay there for the rest of their lives.
And again, I get my perceptions from the outside looking in is we're seeing a dynamic shift, right? There's always going to be
Mm.
some you'll never pull out. But when you look at the numbers of this past election, and you and I were talking about it on my live, you were sending messages through YouTube about it. And I was
Yeah.
doing videos where I was talking about both before and after the election, how the men's vote was going to determine this election. And it's proven
Yep.
beyond any
Yep.
doubt men put not just Trump, by the way, because everybody focuses on president. We need to look beneath that because when it comes to societal issues, Congress and the states have more control than the president will ever have. And you look at how the
Right.
states went, and the for lack of a better term, the red tidal wave that occurred. It was a tidal wave, right?
Yeah.
Except in my state, by the way, North Carolina did not do that. But when you look at it, this election was determined by men, but more precisely, and I give black men and Hispanic men all of the credit. You,
Mm.
as minorities, changed this election. There is no
Yeah.
question in my mind. You look at the black vote, black male vote, it was around 20% went for
Hmm.
Trump, Republican, however you want to phrase it. Hispanic, holy crap, 55% of Hispanic men went that way. And
Mm.
it's a game changer. And you were saying this is coming. I remember you putting a couple things up on YouTube. What made you think that that was going to happen? We've kind of already talked a little bit about what's driving minority men. I just want to put a blanket on it because it's Hispanic as
Hmm.
well. But we talked about how they're being driven away from the Democratic Party, but like I said earlier, it's like this snowball coming down the hill, and now it's turning into an avalanche. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, a lot of it is that the men don't have a place within the Democratic Party. This is one of the first things.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're having women exercise power without any accountability. And the men are very well aware of this situation. And we're pretty much sick and tired of it. And if we oppose this at any time, we're given some sort of label like ism, blah, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at like, no, that's not what's going on. And we're saying, this is my real position. This is what I'm really thinking. And you're not even listening. So we have these platforms that are constantly being torn down, assaulted, like I had two platforms on YouTube that were also taken down in 2016. And I was trying to do something about it back then. It wasn't happening. So you got that. Then you have, uh, basically we have our voice here. Like again, we have this echo. I wouldn't say so much an echo chamber, but men are now being able to talk a bit more freely
Mm-hmm.
and say this is what we're actually experiencing. So when you go on there and you say what happened to you back in the day, and then I go on also and I also say what happened to me, what we're actually doing is building each other, and we're saying we're trying to protect each other and say like, hey, this is where the danger is.
Mm-hmm.
And then other men are listening to this and saying, okay, I know what the problem is. Like I get it. And so before they go down that path, they're properly instructed and they know not to go down there.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have that 30 years ago, or when I started back in 2010. This largely wasn't there. If we said anything, we were attacked. Um, and that was, I again, we have a win now for this. I'm very happy about it. Again, other points that we're talking about with the Black Manosphere,
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Samuel's death. The way that black women celebrated his death left a mark on most black men who were watching Kevin Samuels, and we did not forget it
Wow.
because we saw ourselves as Kevin Samuels.
Mm-hmm.
And what he was saying was what we were thinking and what we had been thinking for years or decades.
Mm-hmm.
So he was actually saying it. And then you have this clean cut, you know, decent looking, educated, well put together black man who is like the epitome of what apparently black women want. He's successful. He's doing a great job. He worked with black men for 3 years, helping them out. And he's spitting it the way it's supposed to be said. He's doing it correctly. And then they basically dance on his grave.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at that and said, we know who you are now. And the way you treat him is the way we feel that personally with us. So now we know how you're going to treat us as well. Okay, now we're making our separation. But this isn't going to continue on anymore.
Wow, it's interesting to me because I remember when Kevin passed away, and I followed him religiously myself. Terrific man. Some people have accused me of being him, the white him. I'm not. Not. I don't even put myself in the same stratosphere. Okay, don't make that comparison, people. Okay, um, but I saw the same thing that you did. Right? Is that, and I would have honestly said women in general danced on his grave. Right? But I do see
Mm,
your point where black women in particular were all over it, and you were
yeah.
kind of touching on something that I wanted to bring up with you, which is how the Democratic Party, feminism, and so forth views black men. One of the things that really pissed me off during the election season was Obama and the way he
Mm,
was talking down to black men. Now, quite obviously, I am not a black man, okay? I was
mm,
pissed, Theo. I mean, pissed when I
mm.
saw that. And I'm sitting there going, if I'm this angry, I can't imagine what a black man is thinking. The way he talked down like you were, for lack of a better term, like you were little 3-year-old toddlers that needed to be told what to
Yeah.
do. And I was
Yeah.
appalled by it. And I'm sitting there going, and I actually thought this, and I think I did put it in a video. He just cost them the election when he did that. You're,
Yeah.
I would love to get your perspective on that. Although I think you're kind of in agreement with me.
I I was looking at him and I was like, Obama, you're my man. Like I was in from Japan. I voted for him for senator in 2004. I voted for him for president 2008 again from Japan, and then 2012 I voted for him. I was actually in Illinois again.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I voted for you for 3 times. I have 2 master's degree. I'm successful. I have my own enterprises. I know what I'm doing. And then you talk to me this way. And then you say the only reason I don't want this bad candidate is because she's a woman. Okay, you and me have problem. I have a
Yeah.
beef with you. You don't dare talk to me that way at all. That's not going to happen. That is some BS. I do not care. I am sick and tired of this. You do not do this. And equally speaking, I'm going to go on this.
Mm-hmm. Go.
Okay. So I'm a Star Wars fan.
That makes two
I've
of
been,
us.
I saw it in 77 with my dad, went to the movie theater, saw A New Hope, right? So I know it. I know Star Wars forwards and backwards. And then the Acolyte came out, and that was some crap. And I was like, nope, this is not Star Wars. This is some crap. I do not accept this. This is bad writing, bad everything. And then they turned around and said that one of the things that I was racist. And I'm like, what?
I'm shaking my head here. It's like, Oh,
Yeah, you don't dare call me racist for pointing this crap out. I know what I'm talking about here. And I was like, oh no, you don't do that with me. So you have this like idea kind of correlated to Obama. He's saying basically that I'm sexist if I don't vote for this person. And the only reason I'm not voting for her because she's a woman. And I'm like, I voted for Hillary in 2016. I ain't voting for this person because it's a bad candidate.
mm.
And then you're talking around like I'm a 3-year-old if I don't vote. Oh no, no, oh no, 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 that could have happened. Nope, nope. I'm definitely gonna be standing in line on November 5th. I'm gonna stand in line. You don't talk to me that way.
But I mean, do you think long term that's going to have a significant effect? I mean, I'm kind of seeing it. I think, like to your point, right? It it was so insulting. And like I said, my reaction was visceral. I was like, "Oh my God, he just cost her the election." First of all,
Mm-hmm.
but second of all, I think he was saying the unspoken word of the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be upfront with you. I was no fan of Obama ever. I did not vote for him, but to be fair, I didn't vote for his opponents either. I voted third party in
Fair.
all three of the elections you mentioned. And I generally tend to do, oh, look at the puppy. What's puppy's name?
Chewbacca.
Chewbacca. What a shock. Um, by the way, I'll show you real quick and I'll let the audience see it. This is my mantra in life, so proof of my Star Wars.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
There you go.
But, it's interesting because I'm wondering, as we move forward, and this is a conversation I've had with both Democratic politicians and Republicans and their campaigns since the election is black men in particular, but Hispanic men as well, and men in general all spoke up. And you guys better understand we are not sleeping giants anymore, right? We are out there. We are watching all of you and what you're going to be doing moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
How does both political parties, but in general, how do they move forward with that reaction to what Obama, the effect it had, I guess is the way I want to put it, and also seeing the results of the election because they are so telling. And I think I've spoken about this. This is a game changer. What happened if we men continue forward with it? And I guess the question I have for you is I want to get your perspective, both as a man but as a black man as well. What needs to be addressed? What are the issues that the Black Manosphere wants looked at or addressed, or however you want to put it? Where would you start so that when we're having these conversations, we have some direction? What would be your thoughts on that?
So one of the first points that would really benefit us is um, mandatory DNA testing at birth.
Amen.
That would solve a lot of problems, and then making paternity fraud not just a misdemeanor, but actually a felony offense. That would go very far. And then going back and saying, if it is proven that the child is not uh, biologically connected to the father, and that fraud was committed in any way, shape, or form, if he's paying child support, all child support is returned back to him. So that would make a lot of black men extremely happy, like dancing in the streets, kind of
Really?
happy.
What,
Oh yeah,
if I may ask, because I'm curious about. I hear white men saying the same thing, by the way, but why so much for the black men? I mean, we all know DNA
mm,
testing comes back roughly 1 in 3 shows the named father is not the father. Do you think it's a
mm.
higher thing in the black community? Because I don't know.
Yes,
I'm asking. That's why I'm asking.
yes, yes. I'm very convinced that it's much higher, and particularly, let's just say with the amount of problems that we have in our group, um, we can never be entirely sure. And without the DNA test, we don't really have confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
So this solves a lot of problems that we would have there, and we would know who the real father is. As Kevin Samuel stated, and again, we have blackdemographics.org. For black men as a group, we are 54% of us are middle class, single, and childless.
Hmm.
And so that's a huge number. And then we have 30% who, roughly 30% who are married, and not some of those guys are stepdads, some of those guys are the biological father. So then we have around 16% or so of guys who are making the children, because you have 80% of black women actually giving birth outside of wedlock.
Say that
Um,
number again. Hold on, you just blew my mind. 80%? Is that what you said?
yeah, it's 80%.
I mean, I knew it was high. I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah, it's actually an absolute crusher.
So that's 4 and 5 children.
Um, Yeah, so basically what happens, this is what we talk about a lot in the Black Manosphere, is that she goes off to Tyrone. So it's a typical mem that we actually have. She goes off to Tyrone, gets knocked up, and then she gives birth. And then she comes back to a guy like me and then says, wife me up. I want to, you have to, uh, we need a strong man or we need a strong mentor for the children. And we're like, go back to your baby daddy. Just go have him do it. And then she says, "Well, it didn't work." And then what she starts doing is denigrating the man who she chose to give to procreate with.
Hmm.
The whole thing is that she chose that guy. It wasn't. There was no force done. There was no manipulation. It was her choice. She knew what she was doing. Um, I believe, again, I haven't looked up this, but I heard this on a podcast. Apparently, the median age for black women giving birth is 22 years old, and the median age for first time marriage is 31. That's a horrible statistic
It is.
if that's actually true. And that, if you just all you have to do is reverse that, and it would solve a lot of
Hmm.
problems in our community. But no, they don't do this. And one of the reasons, again, this is what my suspicion is that they want to maintain control. So basically, if she goes off with Tyrone, and then Tyrone never has a voice. You notice that, right? He's never speaking.
You never hear
So
from him at
only
all. Yeah.
yeah, you never hear from him. So you don't know who he is. So it's only her who's speaking.
Hmm.
So then she's a victim, so she needs welfare. And then she turns around and tries to get a guy later on to marry her, and the guy can't parent the child. He can give resources to the child, but he can't parent the child because the child has a father
Hmm.
who is speechless, unknown. So therefore, all parental control, it lays with the mother, the black mother. And I was like, why would any man who's sane deal with this kind of situation?
Right.
This is horrible. So what we say is first, just get rid of welfare, because welfare is enabling this situation. It's been doing it since the 60s. Get rid of welfare, and then we say like, hey, look, you have to live like life like we have to live life. Because
Hmm.
if if I can't feed my child, I go to jail. I don't get any money from the government.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So, you know, live life on my terms, on black men's terms, not this other way of doing it. And then you'll probably change. You'll probably, see the light.
Well, I want to explore that a little bit with you because one of the things that I had said to you I wanted to talk about was, I mean, the epidemic of fatherlessness across
Mm-hmm.
all races. The evidence shows it's been a dismal failure, and it goes back to the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
But in particular, the black community, I think, is the most affected.
Mm-hmm.
It almost, I, I've had many black men say to me that it was absolutely deliberate.
Yep.
They've said also that and the statistics bear this out. The black family prior to roughly 1962, 63, when they started looking at civil rights and all that, was the strongest and most cohesive of all races.
Right.
And it was bearing out in that, things were progressing and all that. And then it's
Mm-hmm.
like 64 came along, civil rights started, and all of that. And like you mentioned earlier, they decided to demonize men in general, but in particular black men, and in the process destroyed the familial unit,
Right.
especially in the black community. And I'm just genuinely curious, as a group, how do you got to be angry? You have to be. How do
Yeah.
you feel about that as it happened? Because you're old enough to have lived through some of it. And how do you
Yeah.
communicate to the younger generations what happened? And then more so, how's it affecting you now and moving forward?
So when I was growing up, again, I was hearing this problem with the men, right? So the women are talking, the men are never talking. Their men are always
Mm-hmm.
silent. So there's a problem with the men, and so they need welfare. And I didn't want to be a part of this problem. So of
Mm-hmm.
course, white knight liberal. I'm doing what I can to solve the problem, right? But one of the things I'm doing, I'm making sure is I'm keeping my pants zipped.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'll keep my pants zipped, I don't have a problem, right? First thing. So I'm practicing abstinence.
Hey fans, I just wanted to take a quick break from the show to remind you just how much we here at Men Need to Be Heard truly appreciate and value your support. And we'd like to ask you to do us a little favor. It won't cost you a dime, and it'll only take a few seconds out of your day. Could you take a moment to give us that like, give us that thumbs up on the video, and even share it with your friends? Doing so will help us to spread the word and continue to raise awareness on the issues that men and boys face in today's modern world. And we'd love to hear what you have to say on today's topic. So don't forget to comment down below and let us know how we're doing. Your input and feedback means the world to us, and it helps us to continue bringing great guests and even more content each and every week. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss an episode. It's the best way to stay up to date with all of our latest discussions, interviews, and deep dives into the issues men and boys face. It also helps the channel to grow so that we can continue to raise even more awareness on the issues. So hit that subscribe button and become part of the Men Need to Be Heard community. All right, that's it for now. Back to the show.
Okay, went to university. I went abroad. I went to France and Russia, and then I also went to Japan. A total of 16 years of my life. In Japan, single mothers are less than 2% of all mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And they have government programs to get those single mothers married. The government does not want them to be single. So basically what they'll do is they'll say, okay, you're a single mother. If a company hires a single mother, they don't have to pay any payroll taxes on her wage for 3 years. So then they
Okay.
bring her into an office, and then it's more likely that some guy will marry her because she's right there,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in that way, they're doing marriage. I thought that was a really cool system. I come back to America, and I'm hearing what over 20% of mothers are single mothers. First thing I think was this is by choice. There's no way that this is like some sort of victimization. You have too many women doing this. Women are actively choosing this. That's the only way you can possibly get those kind of numbers. This is a choice. And then I'm looking at how how the women are acting, and I'm like, you're basically preferring the government over the man, because it's a reliable income. Even if it's like, say, like welfare, you're getting like $1,000 a month. You value that constant $1,000 a month over actually having a man who would actually be the proper father and raise the family correctly. So I was like, this is a you issue. This has nothing to do with the men at all. And then I saw how divorce was weaponized against the men. This startled me because I was in Japan for a while. I didn't see it. In Japan, you get divorced, you just have to go to the city hall. You bring them a document, and they say, "Did you decide on how you're going to split your assets?" And you say yes, and you just both sign the document. You're divorced. Done. 1 day, 1 hour.
Quick and easy.
Quick and easy. If you want to go to battle, it takes 5 years to go through the court system
Wow.
to do it. So there is no battle because you're going to lose. Both of you will lose.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw how divorce was being used to basically destroy men's lives. And many times the man had no idea and that what was going to happen. And he's fully in love with his wife while the wife is doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat back. I was like, this is like some sort of terror zone, some sort of terror situation. So when this was going on with black men as well, like they're losing their resources. We other guys, again, I took notice. Like I came back, and other guys were like, "Hey, look, we don't want to get involved.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't something we're gonna get in." I don't want to be in love with someone and then she is rewarded for destroying my life in the court system. She's using the government against me. I don't want this. And other guys don't want this too. So this is a central part in the Black Manosphere. We're like, hey, look, not even a prenup. Don't even get married. We can't do that.
It's interesting because I'm thinking back as you're talking about this to the 70s, 80s, and into the mid 90s when welfare reform became a big thing in 95, 96. They were going to fix welfare. They were going to get
Mm,
women off the welfare rolls was a big one, and they did. That's where the deadbeat dad really took off, right?
mm,
And they demonized all dads. But I remember I wrote an article in, I think it was '96, where I talked about how they were basically denigrating black men as not wanting to be fathers. They had this whole thing. And by the way, it
mm,
was both parties. Let's be very clear.
mm.
It was both
Right,
parties doing it.
right.
Republicans held Congress at that point. Clinton was president. It was both parties. And I remember speaking to some black men back then and kind of what you were talking about. They either didn't know it for or couldn't understand it, or they were putting the blinders over their eyes, right? And then it moved forward, and now we're at where we're at now. And I remember sitting there thinking at that time, they're trying to encourage women to go on the government payroll through the 70s and 80s. 90s, they realized that's costing a lot of money. We're trying to cut it back. Didn't work, by the way. Um, and yet, all that time, to your point you made earlier, is I'm like, if you want the government to be your husband, for lack of a better term, you're going to get a check. Yes, you're going to get a fixed amount, and that check's never really going to rise other than from inflation. Whereas the traditional family unit, you start out, I first got married when I was 23. I was broke. I wasn't making a ton of money. But over years, I started making more and more, and I
Mm,
did very well in the long run. And I'm sure the same happened
mm.
to you. How does that mindset still exist, though, that I'm better off with the government than I am with a man?
Because with our community, you have the victim mentality. So as long as she is still a victim, there are people who give resource to her or at least give pity to her. She gets some sort of benefit from being a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if she is a loving wife, she gets no social recognition. So again, in Japan, loving wife recognized. I was in Brazil. I saw loving wives all over the place. In fact, when I was in Brazil, the Brazilian women made me regret being single. That's
Really?
how wonderful they were. Yeah.
Wow.
I looked at how they treated their children and their husbands, and I was like, oh man, me being single, I'm losing out. Like I should be married. Like these women are so good. Whereas in the States, the media, the understanding culture is supporting divorce. If you're a divorced single mother, then it's almost as if you have a social uprising or a level up.
You get
But
social
if you
credit for
are,
it. Yeah.
yeah, social cred. Whereas if you're a loving, okay, if you're a loving wife with children, and oh God forbid if you also go to a conservative church, then it's horrible. I mean, it's like bondage. It's handmaid's tale, right?
Right.
And I'm like, really? I mean, for heaven's sake, this is ridiculous. So then, people say like, why why isn't like in the black community, why isn't there wealth allocation? Why isn't there wealth generation? Why don't there generational wealth? And that's because black women, largely speaking, are choosing the government over men.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no generational wealth with welfare. Everything is just consumed,
Right.
and the only generational transfer you have is getting your daughter onto welfare and then getting her daughter onto welfare, and you're just going to have this generational pattern. I'm sick of it. I see, because the more they do this to justify themselves, they have to throw black men under the bus,
Right.
and then they're the ones talking on the media. We don't have black male media, so it makes me look bad, and I'm not a part of that problem. Don't even think I am. I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
touch you. I'm not doing anything. And so again, I'm a part of that 54% of black men who are, single, childless, and middle class. So why are you going like why are you looking at me? I'm not a part of that.
Hmm.
But the women keep on perpetuating this because that's the mechanism by which they can justify transfer of resources from the government to them.
So, I mean, and that's in a nutshell what it is then, right? Is that
Right.
they're looking at the here and now, how it's going to benefit them. So, all right, I can, let's say you're what was it, 22? You said was the first average age of first child was born. So
20, 21.
21.
I
All
think
right.
it's 21.
So let's say you're a
Yeah.
21-year-old black female, and you have the option of going on welfare or going with, I'll use Tyrone because that's the name you threw out,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that Tyrone probably is going to struggle right now because he's a young lad. Would be the same for any race. I mean, but you have to build up. You're in your young 20s. You're not going to be making what you would make at 60 or 50 or 40. They're consciously deciding the government's the better option now, but not thinking about the future. Is that a good way to put it?
They didn't think about the future when they got pregnant with him in the first place.
Right. Fair point.
So in a lot of the times Tyrone has more than one child.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean I can't stop Tyrone. I can't say like, yo, bro, like stop that crap. Nope, nope, it's not gonna happen. I'm not even in the same social circles as Tyrone.
Right.
So what so then she can go ahead and do this, but she knows that she's going to get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And she knows the situation. And so of course Tyrone isn't going to be with her after the child is born.
Which, by the way, it
This,
makes all of you look bad, right? I mean, it makes all
right,
men look bad, but in particular black men, because then
right.
it
It
creates
does look
this
bad.
false perception that black men don't want to be fathers, right?
Right. That's
And that's
exactly correct.
ridiculous.
So when I was in university, again, we're going back to that time period. I didn't want to be a part of this situation at all, and I just wanted, to have a girlfriend and go after university, get married, and have a family. Right? Typical Americana is very normal. And the way that the girls looked at me, like if I was the white knight and they were crying on my shoulder because they're out with another guy, oh, I was useful, and that's what they did all the time. But if I wanted a girlfriend, oh no, I was taboo. Whereas when I was in Russia and France, I got a girlfriend real quick in both countries. All right, it was like boom, like I had a girlfriend, and these were beautiful, educated, college educated girls. So my first girlfriend was Russian in Russia, and then my second one was Syrian in she was Muslim and Syrian in Paris, and there wasn't an issue. And I stepped back and I was like, the reason is because there's no media telling them that black men are deadbeats or black
Mm-hmm.
like I'll knock her up and then leave her. And she's just looking at me as an American, and she's like, I'm educated, I communicate well, yada yada yada, right? And so it was easy for me to get the girlfriend, and I recognized that I said this again. This is back in 90 what between 93 and 95. Like I said, there's no way I could effectively date in the United States because of this media image of black men. I cannot beat this. It's impossible. So when I went to Japan, they didn't have this image at all. I got a girlfriend, boom, like that.
Wow.
I I was a dating machine in Japan. I had such a great time. It was wonderful. But nobody ever said, "Oh yeah, you're just going to impregnate someone and then just walk away." No. They were like, "If you we expect you to get married and have children."
So, I mean, you've mentioned the media a few times on this. So, do you think this
Yeah.
is largely, yeah, like you even mentioned, there's not many black men in particular in the media, and the ones that are basically are the pander bears, as I call them. Other people call them simps, right? They're beholden to the ideology that says that women should be put up on a pedestal.
Hmm.
Uh, but is it just the media? Is it politicians? I think it's both. But is it also, and this is a genuine question I have to ask, is it within the black community? Because I see men like you, and again, they're more likely to speak to me, black men who are disenfranchised and want to bring about change. But my perception is there's a lot of them out there, but maybe I'm wrong. That's why I want to ask: is it within the community? Is it just media? Is it just politicians, or is it the community itself?
I would say it's more okay. It's the media and the politicians together in the beginning. They're the big ones, and
Mm-hmm.
then the people who are following this in the community, like me before when I was a white knight, I
Mm-hmm.
was following this because this is what I thought was actually going on out there, and I couldn't explain why the black fathers weren't around. Well, that's because nobody was talking to the black fathers. The only people to whom we were listening were the black mothers. That was it. So when we start talking to the black fathers, we get a different
And that,
picture. We get
and Theo, that's why my perception is skewed because I was one of the ones talking to the black fathers.
yeah,
And it was blowing my mind. Again, I'm going back to the mid 90s where they're demonizing black men as not, they don't want to be I mean, they were saying some horrific stuff.
yeah,
Blatant, but both parties, by the way, both parties, blatant racist things. And
yeah.
I'm sitting there and I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? And I'm talking to black men at that time because, I was involved in fathers' rights groups at the point. We didn't have a lot of black men in our groups, but we had enough that they spoke with a voice. And I'm sitting there going, these guys would love nothing more than to be parents to their children, and they're not being allowed to, which is the same
Mm.
thing that white men go through, to be fair. But my perception at that time, and even to this day, is it was even more unfair to black men.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah,
when you go into family court, and I've gone in many times with different men to observe family court and support them and all that. Anyone who says there's not a bias against fathers is lying or a fool. Anyone who says there's not an even greater bias against black fathers and Hispanic fathers, fool doesn't even begin to cover it. And it pisses me off. And I am not a left-wing radical, I'm pretty much center right type of person and I'm seeing it.
yeah,
And I'm like, I'm pissed off about it. Right? I mean,
yeah.
what's it like for you guys? The average black man sitting there, both in the 90s and now, going, oh, they don't want to be fathers. Freaking Joe Biden was saying stuff like that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, how the hell does this happen?
Yeah. I would want nothing more than to be a father right now. I would love to have kids. I would be thrilled to death to have children. Um, I refuse to have children in the United States.
Hmm.
In fact, I'm going to leave America again next year. I'll become official passport bro again. So I've done over 20 years abroad, and I'm leaving the country again next year. I will only get married abroad, and I'll only have children abroad. That's because I have proper rights in the court system over there.
Mm-hmm.
Here, no way. It's too dangerous. It's just too much. As Kevin Samuel stated, the women have Order 66 in them, and so do the court systems. And I cannot deal with that. And I even tell it to my students, I said, well, they're like, what about this? What about that? And I'm like, okay, so you've got 100 clone troopers around you, and you're the Jedi. If you understand they've got a biochip in their head, are you going to stay there?
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Right? Because I'm not. I'm like,
No.
okay, I'm out of here.
Yeah,
I'm
really.
against me. I'm not going to win. Right? So I make this point again. All the women have this option of executing Order 66 against the men. Why would you do that? Why would you possibly expose yourself to that situation? Just go abroad. You're protected abroad. They're not going to do that to you. Um, so again, I for myself again, I'm I'm rather wealthy right now. I'm doing well.
Mm.
I won't date at all in the United States. At all, I won't
It,
do anything.
it's just too risky for you, right? There's
It's
no
too risky.
the risk, the
It's
return on investment isn't there. That's what I talk
yeah,
about a lot. It's, and you're no different than me or any other man. We look at it this way and say, all right, we want children, right?
yeah,
I have 5 children that I know of. There may be a couple I don't, because I was a Chad or a Tyrone, if you will, in the 80s, early 80s. I absolutely was. And I don't say that to brag. I was a stupid idiot from about 18 to 23, okay? And every woman I've had a relationship with since the mid 80s, I've had a conversation with. There may be a knock on the door one day. Or, ancestry.com may come back to haunt me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I look at it as someone like yourself who's, I think you said you were 51. You would love nothing more than to have a child. Everyone wants us to believe in the United States that, men are walking away because we are,
Mm-hmm.
which does not benefit anyone. And then we're going overseas, right? The passport bro phenomenon, MGTOW, if you prefer to call it that. There's different variations on it. And to me, the negative consequences, not just to the country, but on our communities.
Yeah.
Whether you want to talk about your local community, the black community, the white community, whatever, right? It cannot be understated. I had Dr. Warren Farrell, on about a year ago, and we were talking about the boy crisis because he wrote the book on it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he has talked about eloquently in that book is the education issues for black boys in particular,
Right.
and how they're treated, or should I say mistreated, because they are, again, to somebody listening to this, if you think it's bad, if you're a white person and you go into a school district and you think it's bad for your son, you ain't seen nothing yet compared
Right.
to what black boys go through. And again, I am not a left wing radical liberal saying this, okay? So I want to set that.
Mm.
When you look at it that way, and this is a question I have for you, is as a black mother who supposedly loves her son, why aren't they stepping up and saying, you know what, I need to do something to support the black men and my son? Because I don't see them doing it. And maybe I'm wrong again. I don't think I've ever seen
No,
it.
you're largely correct. This is something we talk about in our group quite a lot. If the black woman has a daughter, there's support, there is promotion, there is making sure she's educated, all of that. If she has a son, the situation is entirely different. And for a lot of guys in my class, what they say is there's not the child deletion before birth, it's after birth
Mm-hmm.
if it's a boy. And so that means like basically he is a living like child deletion for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really sad, but that is what a lot of my students have told me about. And basically, as BGS stated rather well, black men's education was not supported or emphasized within the black community because they didn't know if he was going to stay alive or not. So no, it was everything was with the girls,
Mm-hmm.
and this is some BS. Like this is hard. This is actually hard for me to accept. It's actually true, but it is hard. It is just hard for me to take. Now, on my side, fortunately, my mom is white. I'll admit that. So I was like, I had to be educated. There wasn't any choice. Like educate. As my mom said, the only way that I would actually survive racism is if I was properly educated. And so I was, boy, I had to go through the educational system. There was no mercy on me. And then my parents told my teachers that I was not to be treated any differently because I was black. No preferential treatment, nothing. And the only thing they asked for was that I didn't have to deal with racism as growing up. Let that be an adult thing,
Mm-hmm.
but I needed to know math. I needed to know science, right? So make sure I know that. And so I was well protected growing up. And then I noticed, even when I was in the schools, I was looking around, I was like, what's going on with the black boys? Because a lot of these guys don't have any protection. I do.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I mean, I went to U of I on full scholarship, University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. I went there on full scholarship. And a few of the other black boys were even going to junior college after high school. And I was like, wow, there's a real problem here. And what's the issue? So my point is that again, when I saw what was going on, even myself again, if I had a black son, if I had a son, he's probably gonna be black. So he's coming after me, right?
Okay.
um, right. Uh, I wouldn't want him to be educated here. There's no way. Like the only thing I could possibly think of is I can send him to a conservative, like Catholic school from
Really?
yeah, from kindergarten in to high school. I went to Catholic school first to sixth grade. And I credit it for my success because I had nuns in there, and the nuns they're like we don't care what race you are. You're a sinner in front of God, and I've got a paddle. Do your homework. I'm going to get it to you. So I was like,
We need to
I don't
bring that
care.
back, actually, I think. But
Yeah,
anyway.
right. So I was horrified, and I went to public school afterwards. And I was like, "You guys are a joke. You guys are easy. I can just go through. There's no issue here. No paddle, nothing. Don't punish. I can do anything." So you need to have that strong education. And again, like what my favorite place, if I could raise a child, to be in Japan. And I would send, if I had a son, I'd send him to a private school, and I'd be like, "Look, this is how I want him treated, and I want him respected. You don't do any bad treatment of my son." And they would be like, "Fine, no, we have a problem with it. He's an American. He'd probably be half Japanese if I were in Japan. So he's half Japanese, half American. Like, hey, we don't care. We've got other guys like this too in our school. So at that case, he's protected. That's the thing. I would protect my black son in the educational system. Few black kids have that, particularly black boys. They don't have it at all. And what I see with the liberal movement is, as time goes on, instead of it only being black boys who don't have protection in the educational system, now it's all boys,
Right,
right?
right, right.
And I'm like, oh, this is progress. Okay. Huh. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is not what I want. Mm-mm.
Well, it's interesting because they make a lot of hay about how they want to improve the educational system and they want to do it for the black community. But when you look at it, it's the black female community, not
Right.
the black community as a whole. And again, getting out of poverty, one of the best ways to do that is to get educated. That's a given.
Mm-hmm.
Create those opportunities. And they talk about it all the time. Oh, we want to create opportunities. I listen to Board of Ed meetings. They talk about it nonstop. I worked in K 12 as an IT director for a couple of years. It was in every freaking meeting we ever had. They were talking about we need to, and I was in let's put it this way, my school was about as lily white a school as you could have. The few minority students, they were Asian, black, Hispanic. The few that were in there, though, they were getting the attention in the sense that we have to make sure that we don't be perceived as racist towards them, blah, 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 right?
Right.
But yet, when you looked at how it was all coming through and being implemented and all that stuff, I even saw it then. It's one of the reasons I left it, by the way, right? Is I was appalled how they were so focused on female education in particular.
Right.
Black female was top of the list, by the way,
Right.
and it was the exact opposite on the other side. And that
Right.
was one of the reasons I got out. I'm a passionate man. I get pissed off, and I unfortunately don't have the ability sometimes to shut up. And I would bring it up in these meetings, and of course, I'm just this. You have no right to say anything. You're a white man and you're old. I'm defending black men, young boys, and you're pissed at me. And yet you're telling me you're against racism. Something ain't adding up here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But is it
I
any
agree with
different
that.
now? I don't. That was
No.
12, 13 years ago. I think it's worse, if anything.
It's worse. It's by far worse. It is very much a nightmare. Um and there's no consideration for black boys in particular. So when I was in grad school the second time, uh the thing that I noticed, I was just doing my preliminary research, was if you give, particularly in the community for black men, if you give a black man a job for $120,000 a year, he will probably get married and have children and attempt to actually stay in the house with his wife. And like he's trying to avoid divorce.
Mm-hmm.
If you give $120,000 a year to a black woman, she's going to pretty much be run through. She's more likely to become a single mother and then go around and say that black men ain't ish and then say she deserves more. So basically, with one person, you have social cohesion and a framework and structure.
Hmm.
With the other one, you have chaos, and you're most likely to have the basically the school to prison pipeline. And that pipeline is actually established through single mothers. This is something that I didn't understand when I was a liberal. I always thought that it was a part of white power until conservatives came out and started bringing out the data. And they're like, no, man, this is all single mothers for the most
Hmm.
part. In fact, in prison, if you take away the single mother, so the inmates who were raised by a single mother, if you take away that demographic, the number of black and white inmates is pretty much the same
About
based
equal.
upon the
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
about equal based upon the number of people in the area, right? So there should
Hmm.
be more white than black anyway, right?
Right.
Because there's more of us. There's more of you. And I was like, wow, I didn't understand that. That's really true. So why isn't there an emphasis on
Hmm.
not only black male education, but then having the father around? Well, if you have the father around, that means no welfare, right? You can't have the government, but also the father isn't there. The school systems need to have more money for more programs in order to compensate for lack of father. And again, if you look at Catholic schools, they don't have this issue because for the
Right.
most part, it's a two parent household that are sending their kids to a Catholic school.
Hmm.
There's none of this issues. You have to everybody's personally responsible for their actions. Everybody stands in front of God, right?
Yeah.
Basically, right? And you're all responsible, and they don't care who you are or what race you are or anything like that. You all have an emphasis of being educated and doing your homework and being responsible to yourself and to the community, to the church also. So I was like, which system is doing better? So this is part of the reason why, again, in the Black Manosphere, I only teach black men.
Hmm.
There's a few white guys in there because they asked to be in there. I allow them to be in there. The white guys do well as well, but for the most part, it's about 98% black men. And when they are together and the emphasis is on them, they excel. They have no problem. They're doing projects. They're getting jobs. They're getting jobs for over $120,000 a year. They're excelling at them. They're not losing their jobs. They're staying there. They're gaining wealth. They're getting cash. Some of
Hmm.
them are buying houses. Some are becoming passport bros, going abroad. Some of them are starting families. Right? Everything works. But when you don't emphasize black men's education, you have chaos.
Right.
Right? So I'm like, emphasize that education. And then why is it that I can do a bigger effect by myself sitting in this room than the government can do? I'm like, come on.
Well, I mean,
Democrats, man, you failed.
yeah, they failed is right. But I think, you mentioned the prison pipeline out of schools. I mean,
Mm.
prisons, for the people don't like acknowledging this, but they're moneymakers a large
Yep.
part. And to your point, I did a lot of research on this a few years back and looked at exactly what you were talking about. Is if you take out single motherhood, the prison populations per capita are
Mm-hmm.
basically equal. When you look at gang representation, because I looked into that also, the majority of gang members, at least black gang members, come from single mother households.
Yep.
They Black boys, all boys, but in particular black boys, at least from based on my research, are so desperate for their father, for
Yes.
that mentor, for
Yep.
however you want to phrase it, that they go seeking it. And this applies to all boys, but really, because it's so non prevalent in the black community, they'll go anywhere to get it, and they're gravitating towards gangs. And I've mentioned that
Yep.
before to politicians, and their
Yep.
first response is, "You're just being racist." And
No.
I'm
No.
like,
No.
what? Wait a minute, this is
No.
data. You
Yeah.
cannot refute this data.
Yeah.
And both parties again, by the way, right? And I say to them, "Do you really want to solve this problem?"
Yeah.
And oh, of course we do. And their answer is, we got to more prisons, push the black female in education. And I'm like, how do you not know this hasn't worked for 50 years and it's not going to work if you keep doing it?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on all that?
So basically, if you don't have the father there, you don't have somebody who can emotionally control the child, particularly the son. And so then, if the son becomes gynocentric and is thinking with his emotions, or he's led with his emotions, if you get angry, it can escalate and bang bang, and then you're in jail, right?
Exactly.
Well, my mother said to me, one of the things she says the two greatest gifts she ever gave to me was number two, she sent me to a Catholic school growing up.
You keep talking about that, so it must have had an impression.
It had a pretty big impression.
A
And
few
then
of them on your ass, by the way, right, with the paddle, I'm
yeah,
sure.
I was for a while. I was the only black kid in the entire school, so I was like, okay, I deal with it. Um, and then the second best thing she said, I gave you a father, and he's inside the house,
Mm-hmm.
right? And my dad was so important for me growing up. I cannot emphasize this enough. If I acted in a certain way and he did not approve, it wasn't just yelling at me. It was physical punishment. I was aware that I could die with my dad, right? Like he could. He's like, I could make another one of you.
That's
Okay,
my
it's not
line.
hard.
That was my line with my kids. It only take me 9 more months. I'll make another one of you.
I could another, yeah. So I knew this as I was growing up. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna mess with this guy, and like if I acted out or if I was too extreme or if I did something that was really wrong, it wasn't just I had to face the repercussions of that. I had to face my dad, and
Mm-hmm.
that was the most horrifying thing I could possibly have. So I knew how to act, right? I learned very quickly how to act in a certain manner because I didn't want to face my dad. And then, of course, I got all the instruction from him. Okay, I'm asthmatic. The guy who taught me how to deal with asthma was my dad. I can breathe properly because of my dad. I know how to control my lungs and
Mm-hmm.
lower my stress level because of my dad. He'd stay up with me all night because I had asthma attacks at night. He'd stay up with me drinking coffee because it opens up my bronchial tubes, and he'd calm me down so I could actually go back to sleep. Do you know how valuable that was? I can't emphasize it. He just sit there and talking to me. I loved it. It was so great just talking to my dad at 2 o'clock in the morning because he'd be
Mm-hmm.
up working. He was a writer, so he'd just wake me up because I was coughing in the middle of the night. Um, you know, how many other problems did I have in life? I go to my dad first about it. He'd tell me what to do. Not my mom. No, she was okay, but my dad. He was the one who had the answers and the
Right.
solutions. And then when it came to me going to school, the person who was pushing me, who was like, yeah, you got a B. I know you can get an A. You were being lazy. Or you got an F in this class? Really? You were lazy. I saw what you were doing. Like, okay, so no Transformers, no G.I. Joe for you for 6 months. Like, you know, that's it. Like, I want Transformers. No, you can't watch it. It's done for you. You can't do it like until your grades improve. And he's not playing around. He's watching the television. I can't cheat.
Right. Right. Right.
Right? There was rules and structures with this guy. I loved him for it. I was like, this is exactly what I need. Of course, I went to university. Right?
Right.
That was dad.
You
It
didn't
was
have a
all dad.
choice, right? Dad was going to
Well, yeah.
ensure you went one way or the other. You
I had to get away from him.
you were either going to go because you wanted to, or you were going in a coffin, right? I mean, that's.
Yeah, it was
But
like
but that's
I knew. Yeah,
you're
18
talking
years old, I
about.
had to get out of the house.
Yeah, you're talking about what dads bring to the table that
Yeah,
moms can't, and that's not a knock on moms, right?
right.
I talk about it all the time. When it comes to raising children, dads have pros and cons. Moms have pros and cons, and children are better off when they have both in their
Both.
lives.
Yeah.
And you get the best of both worlds and all that. And going back to the African American community, you guys don't have that. I mean, it like you said, 80%, right? I mean, it's insane, and yet I would love to bring you with some of the politicians that I talk to because they just cannot fathom it. I don't know if they're blind, if it's bigotry or what. But when I have this conversation, they look at me, you're an old white guy. I mean, I've had them literally say it to me. And I'm like, but I'm not telling you anything different than what black men experience, right?
Mm.
And again, it's both parties to be clear. Neither party cares as far as I'm concerned. Um, but it goes to where I want to kind of shift the conversation to is how do we move forward from this, Theo? The work that you're doing is part of it, but how do we, I guess, first start get some understanding and acceptance of the realities? Because I think that's the biggest issue right now is people are blind to what's going on.
Okay, so basically, black men have got to control their own voice.
Mm-hmm.
And if gynocentric black men largely are lost, they're going to maintain the liberal viewpoint and they're just going to perpetuate it. So conservative black men have got to have a platform that's protected, especially on YouTube or where else, where they can say what's really happening and
Mm-hmm.
they can be honest about the situation. And then we can show an alternative reality. So, for example, for myself, I'm on various podcasts and talking. I'm successful. I'm showing this image, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't knock it down.
Mm-hmm.
When I go to abroad, like another country, and I get remarried and I have children, that is a part of the image, and I'm able to show, hey, look, see, I'm not leaving the house. Here's my wife. She doesn't have to work. I mean, she works inside the house, but I pay all the bills. I get everything done. I'm here with my kids. I'm playing with them. They're all good. They're doing well in school. Here it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't knock that image, right?
Right.
And that's what they're always trying to do. They're always
Yeah.
trying to tear down basically successful black heterosexual males. Always.
Mm-hmm.
They cannot have them around because it's some sort of affront or threat to the main liberal establishment of who black men in particular are. The more I see this, I just look at the Democrats and saying like, the party's changed, but are you sure? Because
that's a, that's something. I mean, you're getting into a very touchy subject right now, but let's go there briefly. YouTube,
yeah,
give us a little leeway here, YouTube, because I've made the same argument. I might add, right? Is you can claim you changed all you want, but you're really stuck in the 1870s. Forget the 1970s, and yet, like you said, there's largely the black community. 90+% of black females voted for the Democratic Party, roughly 80% of black males. And that there's plenty of people like yourself, there's plenty of black women out there going, this is not our reality. They are not viewing us the way they should. Yet, I've been hearing that for 50 years, my friend. And it ain't no different now than it was then. How do you change that even?
it's it it has to be long. We're talking for our side. I'm thinking about a 20-year change,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? But that's just putting a nick in a dent in the messaging. Um, I always tell the guys in the group who actually have children. I always say, like they're good fathers. I want to say that they're very involved in their children's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, make a few YouTube videos and just show you,
Great way.
like with your child's face hidden, but just show you being a father, loving your child, and talking about how you love being a black father. Just do that. It's just
Mm-hmm.
something, a small thing to do, because we desperately need that image out there. And other black men need to see an alternative. And for the most part, we don't have it. Um, Again, it was a real shame we lost Cosby. Cosby was one of the best images that we had, and
Yeah, that. and
boy, was that
and
taken
by the
down
way,
violently.
Diddy was another one to a lesser extent. I mean, he was a highly successful man, black man, and now he's a pariah, right? And
Right?
you lose
Yeah.
that example, and and I sit there like I've not commented publicly on the Diddy thing. It would not be positive. Let's put it that way. And Cosby's another beautiful example, and I can think of others. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you directly is, I'm advocating for men. Um, how do someone like myself, white men in general, how do we support you better? Because honestly, I don't remember the exact demographics because I haven't looked at them in a while, but 6 months ago, roughly 15 to 20% of my audience was black. And when I first saw it, I have to be honest, I was surprised in a good way. Since that time, I've noticed upticks in the numbers. I'm seeing more and more black men coming and commenting and reaching out to me, and I'm like, okay, I need to do better for them. I'm speaking out on, for men as a whole, but how can this 61-year-old white as white can be, hello, guy, of German Italian ancestry,
Right.
how can I better help to raise awareness? Because that's something that I think is critical. Because not only does it help black men, it helps all men.
Right. Yeah. This is something that we're talking about right now in the Black Manosphere, that we're largely controlling the messaging.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we have to be talking not only what's beneficial for us as black men, but all men, right? Because it's largely speaking, the liberals are putting all men in the same boat. It doesn't matter the
True,
race.
very true.
Um, so one of the things is like allowing us to come every once in a while on your platform, just allowing black men to talk. That is, I think, really beneficial. That's great. You could probably reach out to other black content creators, like again, like Medium Man. There's one thing, he's in Texas with me over
Mm-hmm.
here. There's other guys, Obsidian. You might want to reach out to him.
Line them up
You
for
know,
me, my friend, because
yeah,
I'll
I'll
have
do
them
it.
on. I mean, I had one of the best conversations I ever had was with Butch Slaughter, Ulysses Slaughter, where he went through that
Yeah,
false allegation a year and a half or so ago. And
yeah,
again, he's been instrumental in helping me to shape my content a little bit. But I want to do more, and that's where having you on. That's one of the reasons I reached out to you is because, again, I want to give you that voice. You
mm,
as the Black Manosphere, for lack of a better term, because again, I have a pretty good sized platform, but it's not that I'm not comfortable talking about it. I am,
mm,
but they disregard me. Politicians do it all the time, right? I've said it 3, 4 times now. You're a white guy. What are you talking about black men's issues for? Well, does just because I'm white doesn't mean I don't understand what they're going through. I had a
yeah,
Democrat tell me that about 3 months ago that I reached out to, and I'm like,
mm,
I won't use the word I use. It started with M and ended with ucker. Okay, because I was pissed. I'm like,
yeah,
you're disregarding what I'm saying because of my skin color, but yet telling me that you're all about inclusivity. You lying mother.
yeah. But look what they're doing. See, what they're trying to do is get the men to not talk to each other, to
Division.
separate,
Yes,
division.
get us to divide.
And
Exactly.
so, as long as they divide and then say that men are bad, and then men are trying to solve the problem, then they're probably going to be looking to women for the
Mm-hmm.
solution instead of men talking to each other. So they always try to divide and silence men. I noticed that when I got into the manosphere, I was like, ooh, this is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to start, the men have actually got to be talking. Now, us in the Black Manosphere, again, in my group, we are noticing that there is a problem with white men in terms of their position right now in the society. They are suffering. We are aware of that. And I've been thinking about what to do, like kind of open my class up more to white men, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And of course, my class is open to white men. It's not a problem. But our problems in the black community are so great, particularly with our group that we're dealing with, that we're like, okay, like sure, white guys can come over, but it is like we have a whole ton of work that we have to do
Sure.
already in our group, right?
Right. Totally get
So
it.
um, basically, the black and white men conservative need to be talking to each other and
Mm-hmm.
comparing notes, saying what is this going on with you? What's going on? And the more that we're talking, the better off we're going to be as a group. My other point that I always say is that more white men need to become passport bros, need to be going abroad and starting their families. Some of the best white students that I have in my class, they're married. They married outside the country.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Mm-hmm.
they're not married to American women at all, and they're very good. They're very good students, and they're doing this the best they can. And I always show them as examples to the rest of the class. I say, look, this guy can do it. You guys can do it too. It's not hard to do.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
that's the
that's
point.
my solution.
Yeah, I mean that's something that I agree with you 100% on. Is that and men in general, right? we're talking about from the racial perspective, but all men, we need to come together and speak as one voice, right?
Mm,
A lot of the issues that you've brought up are the very same, maybe to different levels, that white men go through, that Hispanic, Asian men go through, right? But yet there's that division. And, they being the politicians, one, they don't see it, but two, a lot of them are creating that division and we're allowing them. That's what we have to stop also. And the way to do that is people like you and I having a conversation like we're doing right now,
right.
sharing notes, comparing things, talking about both of our experiences and showing that in reality the majority of it is communal. We both have the same experiences as white
Right.
men and black men. The same for Hispanic, same for Asian, Indian men right now, what they're going through. If you're looking
Oh
into
my
India,
God.
I
Oh,
oh my god, it puts everything else to shame right now. They are literally outlawing manhood in India. That's how bad
yeah.
it's getting. And again, that's where I feel it's my place to, and I'm looking to get an Indian man to come on and talk about it. I've got a couple connections already because, again, their experience, your experience, my experience is so similar. There are differences, absolutely, but if we have that conversation and then have that cohesiveness, then we can bring it forth, and that's really my goal for everything. Because the more men speak as one voice, women have mastered that, by the way.
Mm.
That's why they're at where they're at. The sooner we can really bring about effective change. At least that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with this, and also that we can help each other because
Exactly.
this next point, like nobody is listening to men's problems. No one is there to solve them. This is why we have a self deletion problem.
Hmm.
We have a huge number of this that's just happening on a daily basis, and of course the liberals don't care. It's almost as if they think it's a good policy. There's less of us around, so good. The women can get the jobs or something like that. I'm like, why don't if women were self deleting to this level, you guys would have like billions of dollars in policy trying to prevent it.
Yep.
So um, it's listening to our problems, our situation, and then humanizing it, not dehumanizing us. And the other point, as we say, is that we're not going out there and saying don't listen to women. We're just saying listen to men too. Um, we're not saying, for example, to take away women's rights or that there should be forced to be impregnated or some sort of crap like that. But we are saying that men, especially fathers, should be respected as fathers and not have parental rights taken away from them. Um, and it shouldn't be sport like this against men. Men are not the villain automatically just for existing,
Hmm.
right? And that's what the real narrative is within the liberal community. And we're not. That's just not who we are. And so until that is properly rectified and acknowledged, we have to stick together more and more often. So, yeah, I would like to have more uh, communications between like the white and the black manosphere,
Hmm.
more joint productions, more communication back and forth, and then sharing ideas, what's actually going on in the understanding what's going on in the future. Um, and then, of course, again, I was abroad over 20 years. Most most passport bros are white, just straight out. To be honest with you,
Hmm.
so you got to expand that network, get more guys going abroad, and becoming fathers and enjoying family. I think that's essential for them because, largely speaking, it's like you know, um, the Western woman has thrown away family and motherhood, and I don't know.
I've been trying
Are
to
you?
figure that one out for 30 years, my friend.
Oh, like, are you serious? I'm like, I always ask them, like, okay, so one of the characteristics of a mammal is getting together with a member of the opposite sex and procreating. So if you're not doing that, like, are you really a mammal? Are you a part of that kingdom? I mean, are you like a reptile or something like that?
There. Well,
You're not a mammal.
no, well, the four Bers now are going to find out, for the over the next 4 years, because apparently that's going to change everything if they cut their hair and walk away from men.
Oh my! Oh, I'm so shocked. I'm so shattered. I don't. What am I gonna do? I can't. I
Yeah, it's
can't
like I
have a
said in a
reproduce.
video. What do you expect? Men are going to demand to go and re-vote? It's not gonna happen. So
No,
it's the logic, All right, Theo, we're getting short on time. I do want to touch on a couple of things,
sure.
specifically with the work that you do. As part of the Black Manosphere conclave, if I'm saying that right. I know you have that annual conference and all that. What is talk a little bit about what is that about? How is it? What is it to do, the goal, I guess, to benefit men, black men, etc. And if someone's interested into it, how do they find out more about it?
Okay, so if you want to find out more about it, just go to www.blackmanosphere.org, or you just go ahead and Google that, and you can find our site. Basically, what we come to do, we come together and we talk about various issues that are affecting us, and there's a huge range of topics. For example, mental health.
Big
That's a
one.
big one.
Big one.
Yeah. I had to go to therapy for parentification and
Hmm.
also for childhood survivor of narcissistic parents. So I did that again. That was all related to my mom, straight up. So, um, but I'm much more mentally healthy now because of that. So we do talk about mental health. We talk about fitness. I need to improve mine, that's for sure. And we talk about like things like investments, crypto, real estate, and how to become the best man you can possibly be. Fatherhood. We talk about what it's like to be a father. We talk about self defense, again, using a cane for self defense, but also what it means to be a black man dealing with, toxic femininity.
Hmm.
We're dealing with feminism. And then also in the at the conclave, I introduced my computer course, and then that's where we have the first lab set up, and then together we do the beginning labs, and that's usually with the students. They have to attend the conclave in order to become one of my students.
Gotcha.
And so you have these networks. You get to meet people, and then you form groups, and then together we understand that we're going to take this course. We're going to try to get into cloud computing, and we're doing this as a group. It's not just an individual. It's not you versus the world. It's us together trying to improve ourselves, and then going out and improving ourselves in the career field. That's what the real messaging of the Black Manosphere is. It's only men. For the most part, it's black men. I'd say about 99% black men, to be honest. We
Hmm.
had around 300 people, right, just over 300 people in the last one. The first one I had in 2021 was about 90 people in Atlanta. So we're doing well. We're anticipating around 1,000 people in Miami next year.
Nice.
So we are growing. We're doing well, and that's just what it's about. It's a great opportunity. It's really fun. We had Dennis Sperling there last time. Again, it's just a time for us to get together and recognize who we are. And again, we have it's you got to wear. You have to have a certain attire on. You have the shoes, the pants. You can't look like you can't look like you're from the streets. Okay.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I get. No, I get it.
So,
So business casual, basically,
yeah,
right?
visual
Yeah.
casual. You got to go there and show up. But I have some of my best conversations there, and then I'm listening to the guys, what their problems are, and what their situation is, and I'm helping to promote them afterwards. I'm helping to get them into jobs. Give you an idea, one of my students, he just signed a contract yesterday for how much was it for? It was like $205,000 a year,
Nice. Good for him.
somewhere around there.
And good
Yeah,
for
for
you to
doing
help them to do that.
yeah.
I mean, you're doing amazing work, Theo, and I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and again, having a dialogue with me and educating me, because that's one of the things that like we've just talked about, that I want to do is be able to get more men from all races to come together, work together, educate each other,
Mm.
see our commonalities, but also see our differences and celebrate them. There's nothing wrong
Mm.
with that. And really, that's how we're going to get out of this quagmire that we're in. Because to be brutal, as I've said time and again, this is not some original thought of mine. This is exactly what the women's group started doing in the 70s. And it
Mm.
works, and the sooner that we come together as men, the sooner we start affecting change. And I thank you for everything that you're doing and for
Mm.
coming on this show. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, Theo, or follow you on social media, how can they do that?
So my email is TheoWAF@gmail.com. So it's TheoWAF at gmail.com. You can definitely get me also through blackmanosphere.org. There's a place in there you can send in a request, and one of the easiest of getting me. In terms of socials, I really don't have a social. I don't really have a footprint. I knew when I started this that I would be attacked and doxxed very hard,
Yep.
so I pretty much removed my socials, and I keep a very low profile. I don't have a YouTube channel for that purpose because I knew they'd come. I You have no idea how many gynocentric men argued with me when I said that I wanted to specifically only teach black men cloud computing. I teach AI right now as well.
Why is that?
They're like, you
What?
want to teach black men AI, and you can't do that. You have to have the women in there, or else you won't be successful. It's like, no, bro, no, no.
Oh my god.
My curriculum does not depend on women. I'm teaching black men only, and that's the way it's going to be. They just start going crazy over that. I was like, bro, what's wrong with you?
Well, I mean,
It's fine.
if I may say so, Theo, I would encourage you to start looking at maybe doing a YouTube channel or something. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of hate. I'll tell you right now. I get so much hate. I laugh about it more than anything else. The number of times I've gotten angry this year is probably, I definitely could do it on one hand. Probably I could think of two right off the top of my head. That was it. And that was, an hour later, I'm like, what the hell were you mad about, and laughing about it? But again, the more that gets out there, the more of us that speak out, you are more than welcome to come on my platform as much as you want. And I definitely want to have you back on because I find this fascinating, and having a good conversation as two guys, right? Doesn't matter that one of us is white, one of us is black. Who cares? We're having a conversation. We're talking about issues, and that's what we need to do. And I thank you
Thank
again
you.
for coming on. Any final thought that you want to share with the audience, my friend?
Again, thank you for having me on. Thank you for really saying what a lot of men are thinking in your podcast. That's what I like about your podcast. You say things that I'm just like, yep, that's exactly what I'm thinking right now, and I think you're very accurate. Again, I thank you and commend you for your leadership in your podcast and your channel. Keep it going.
Oh, I
Keep it
will
going as
be.
much as we
Yeah.
can. I'll definitely float your channel over to the guys and tell them, hey, look, come over here, think about it, and keep on talking about fatherhood. Think about the problems you're going through with the court systems, and we need to have that voice continually talking. It's just the way it is. We really need to have it because the way we're treated in this country is just unacceptable. It's very horrible.
And
I'm
it
treated
doesn't benefit society at all that we're doing that.
no,
It's
no, it doesn't
hurting
at all.
society. And
We're treated better abroad, and I'm just like, so is this like another Jim Crow? Like that's how I always think.
for
Is this another Jim
for a
Crow? So
lack of a better way of putting it, yeah, it is. I
yeah,
believe that myself.
yeah.
And,
So
and it's sad.
just being against me, it's all of us. It's
It's
all the
all
men.
it's a Jim Crow against men. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
So
great way to put it. And I'm sure TikTok and YouTube will not like us saying that, and I don't
yeah,
care.
I don't
Um,
care because this is like
I don't care either because it needs to be
so,
said, right?
but again, it would just like so they attack us. It just further proves that that's what it is.
Yeah. We want to hear your issues, but you're not allowed to talk about them. And, we're going to put you down because you're assign your characteristic.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
the
I'm not.
more we
Yeah.
advance, the worse we get in some ways. At least that's my thought.
Ugh. Yeah, the more opportunities we have to read, the less we read.
Yeah, exactly.
The
So,
the more access we have to books, the more we close them.
the internet is both the greatest invention of ever for mankind and the worst at the same time.
Yeah.
You have literally the entire history of human knowledge on this little device right here, and it's a good thing and a very, very bad thing.
I
So,
I turn mine off to tell you the truth. I keep it away from me. It's helped me a lot. So
yeah,
I removed most of my apps, and I said I'm going to go back and live in the '80s for a while.
that's not a bad thing. All right, my friend, thank you, and I will definitely encourage you to get your own channel going, but to come back and visit me anytime you want.
I'll be thinking about it.
All
Thank you
right.
very much.
All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here on the show. What a great conversation I had with Theo. And this is what we need to be doing, like we talked about in the show, guys, is having dialogues with each other, communicating with each other, joining forces with each other. It's really about all of us. And the more that we do that, the sooner we can bring about effective change, because the bottom line is society doesn't like men in general. It doesn't matter whether you're black, white, green, yellow, purple, polka dot, I don't care. It's about us coming together and speaking as one voice. We did that in the election and we changed history, literally. So keep thinking about that and keep reaching out to one another. If you've enjoyed the show, you know the drill. Give me that thumbs up, give me the like, give me the subscribe, give me the follow, all that stuff. And be sure to comment below what you thought about the show, because we're both Thea and I are interested in what you guys thought, what we were talking about, and how you can see or what you think we can do to really progress things and come together better as men. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time on Men Need to Be Heard.